there must now be a full review of the evaluation of the initiative. Several new agencies have been created. The ministry has been decentralized and operations devolved. Several new policies and initiatives and programs have been implemented. We must now assess where we are relative to the goals previously set. We must identify and resolve conflicts that have emerged, inconsistencies and bottlenecks such as the tertiary financing problem, agree on new goals and identify the critical pathways to achieve them. We must now, Mr. Speaker, launch the second phase of education transformation in Jamaica. As in the first phase, bipartisan political support is critical. This Parliament must commit to new national targets in education in terms of resources, participation, and output. Government and opposition must agree to make education an area of national priority and cooperation. It is necessary to assemble an independent team to conduct the strategic and operational review and make recommendations. However, unlike the first transformation effort, no special implementation team should be set outside the Ministry of Education. I believe that the organizational structures are now in place in the ministry and are sufficient to deliver what is required. We must now get the ministry and the newly established agencies and departments to actually do the work of transforming the education system and accomplishing the goals set for them. Parliament's role would be to ensure accountability and to show its commitment to the process. I believe, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying it for the hearing of the Prime Minister, that a special committee of Parliament with appropriate advisors should be set up to oversee the direction set by the second phase of education transformation.
Members' time for speaking has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the member's time for speaking be extended sufficient to allow him to complete his presentation.
The question is that the member's time be extended sufficiently for him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Mr. Holness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. With all the new agencies and policies in place, there must be an agreement by the government to allocate the required resources in the budget, regardless of fiscal exigencies. Otherwise, what is likely to happen is that the government will budget for inescapable recurrent expenses such as salaries for the people hired in those agencies, but they will cut back on the resources to actually produce the desired output. The second phase of transformation must see a more concerted effort to create greater stakeholder participation. The churches have been the foundation of education in Jamaica. Many of the schools we rely on today as schools of choice are church or trust schools. Some founded over 2 centuries ago. In fact, we have schools that are over 3 centuries old. Yes. I believe the church and private sector should be engaged with renewed effort towards building and operating institutions, including diagnostic facilities and special education facilities. Importantly, we must integrate the private sector into the oversight of education to ensure that our education output is aligned with our economic needs. Mr. Speaker, this is what Singapore did with its education system. It ensured that the system was turning out students who could meet the economic requirements of the country. Mr. Speaker, we keep tinkering and skirting around the problem of tertiary education financing. The move to place the full increment of the increased education tax into the loan pool of the Student Loan Bureau is something that I had planned to do, and therefore support this move. Mr. Speaker, we have brought resolutions to the House before on this matter of tertiary financing, but we have not taken a consensus position. It seems, Mr. Speaker, that the strategy of both governments has been to borrow as needed to fill the gap. Once the loan pool is being expanded by borrowed funds, unless government absorbs the interest cost, then the flexibility of the Student Loan Bureau in improving terms to borrowers is limited. Unless. But we have seen it come down, and we've reduced it, but the vagaries of the economy. Further, as the number of students enrolling increases, and as I have showed you, Mr. Speaker, the number of students enrolling in tertiary institutions are increasing. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the gross enrollment rate has moved from somewhere in the region of 24% to somewhere in the region of about 32%. So it is not a trend that is going to fall. The trend is increasing. There are more students qualifying, and therefore there's going to be even greater demand on the Student Loan Bureau. So the strategy of borrowing to fill the gap, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, is not a sustainable strategy. The net effect of this is that tertiary institutions will have to find ways, Mr. Speaker, to pass on costs to the students in increased fees, which eventually these students are going to go back to the student loan to ask for more money. And there you have it again, Mr. Speaker. The demand on the student loan is far more than what we have put in its capacity. Between 2006 and 2012, loan applications have doubled, but the value of loans have approximately tripled, showing that fees have increased much faster than applications. If this situation continues, many Jamaicans who qualify for tertiary education will be denied access. The problem requires bold consensus on three things. Mr. Speaker, the Parliament, government, must make up its mind about whether or not it is going to increase the budgetary allocation to tertiary education. We have to make up our minds, Mr. Speaker, the Parliament, government, as to whether or not we're going to create once and for all an endowment for the Student Loan Bureau, or if not an endowment, then we must agree on a very large income stream that can support the increased demands for loans yearly. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest something here. If we can't find the funds to create an endowment for the student loan pool, then what the government could do